There is a kind of woman that no man can forget. Not because of her beauty, not because of her body, but because of how she made him feel about himself. When a mature woman knows how to speak to a man's soul, she doesn't just compliment him, she awakens something ancient inside him. And in that moment, he realizes, she sees me in a way no one else ever has. Let's talk about that woman. Let's talk about you. Asterisk, there is a quiet force within human connection that often goes unnoticed. It lives in the subtle art of affirmation, not shallow praise, but the kind of recognition that reaches into the core of another human being. When a mature woman learns to speak to a man's deeper essence, she becomes a mirror, not just to his actions, but to his potential. And in that reflection, something ancient stirs within him, a longing not merely to be admired, but to be understood. To be seen. A compliment, when given consciously, is not just a string of kind words. It is a psychological offering, a gesture that acknowledges not only the external achievements of a man, but the internal forces driving them. Most men live with a quiet hunger, not for more success, not for more accolades, but for someone to see the invisible effort behind the image. He's been taught to hide his vulnerabilities, to keep moving, to produce, to protect. But underneath it all is the question, does anyone see the man beneath the armor? And this is where the power of a conscious woman emerges. A woman who has traveled through her own shadow, who knows her own depths, can sense when a man is silently drowning in expectation. She doesn't speak to him like the world does. She doesn't echo back his titles or numbers. She looks deeper. She finds the place where his strength intersects with his struggle, and she names it. You're not just successful, she might say. You're consistent, even when you're tired. That tells me something about your integrity. In that moment, something inside him softens, not out of weakness, but from recognition. Because for perhaps the first time in a long time, he feels safe enough to exhale, to be fully human. And it wasn't because she flattered his ego. It was because she touched his soul. This is the archetypal power of the conscious feminine. She sees with more than just her eyes. She observes the man behind the mask, and when she offers her words, they carry weight. They resonate. They affirm not what he pretends to be, but what he is becoming. The psychological impact of such a compliment is immense. It awakens a man's desire to rise, not to impress, but to embody. When he feels seen for his character, for his endurance, for the depth of his thoughts and the compassion he tries to hide, he begins to believe that maybe, just maybe, those parts of him are worthy too. This belief creates movement in his inner world. What was once unconscious now starts to take shape in the light, and the woman who sparked that awakening, she becomes unforgettable, not because she sought to be, but because she offered him a glimpse of himself that he could not find alone. We are all shaped by how we are mirrored by others. If a man is constantly mirrored as nothing more than a provider, a protector, a leader, he may begin to forget that he is also a dreamer, a feeler, a learner, a man with wounds. But when a woman speaks to his resilience rather than just his results, to his emotional intelligence rather than just his income, to his integrity rather than just his image, she realigns him with his full self. This is not manipulation. This is medicine. It is healing through truth. Compliments like these are not manipulative tools to gain favor. They are sacred offerings. The mature woman who gives them understands that her words can shape the soul of a man. And she does not wield this power carelessly. Her compliments are not constant, nor are they generic. They are specific, intentional. They are moments of clarity dropped like pearls in a world full of noise. And that is why they are remembered. Because the man who receives such words is often starving for them, even if he doesn't know it. He may have been told 1,000 times that he's good, what he does, But when she says, "There's something in your presence that makes people feel like they can trust you," he hears something entirely different. He hears purpose. He hears identity. And more than anything, he feels seen. This kind of psychological recognition transcends romance. It is soul to soul. It is one human reminding another, you matter not for what you produce, but for who you are beneath the noise. And in that space, a man doesn't just feel attracted, he feels safe, empowered, inspired to become more. There is an invisible language that lives in the realm of the feminine, a deep sensitivity to emotion, an intuitive knowing that sees what others miss. This is not a loud power, but a quiet authority, a strength rooted not in control, but in perception. And when a mature woman steps fully into this space, her ability to recognize a man's emotional truth becomes one of the most transformative gifts she can offer. For in a world that teaches men to suppress their emotions, to armor up, to perform rather than feel, the presence of a woman who sees beyond that facade is not only rare, it is sacred. From early boyhood, many men are conditioned to believe that their emotional world is a weakness. They are taught to fight, to achieve, to lead, to protect, but seldom are they encouraged to reflect, to grieve, to express vulnerability without shame. So they build layers. They become masters of silence. And beneath that silence is often a deep well of unspoken emotion, longing, doubt, fatigue, even tenderness that has no safe place to land. The world celebrates their strength, but forgets their soul. This is where the mature woman comes in, not to fix him, not to counsel him, but to see him, to recognize his emotional dimension and call it forth not as a flaw, but as a facet of his wholeness. She may say something as simple as, "You always carry so much, but you never complain." That says a lot about your heart. And just like that, a door opens inside him, because the weight he has been carrying alone has just been witnessed. This kind of recognition is not common, and it cannot be faked. It requires presence. It requires empathy. It requires a woman who has sat with her own feelings long enough to understand the silence in another. When she looks at him, she doesn't just see his actions. She senses his intentions, his worries, his inner battles. She notices the way he softens around children, or how his eyes grow distant when certain subjects are mentioned. She sees not only what he presents to the world, but what he hides from it. And instead of fearing his complexity, she honors it. There is immense psychological power in emotional recognition. When a man feels that a woman sees his unspoken world and does not recoil from it, he begins to reconnect with it himself. He becomes less afraid of his own vulnerability. He stops performing and starts feeling. And in doing so, he becomes more whole, more alive, more present. The woman who evokes this in him becomes a portal, not to dependency, but to inner integration. She is not his escape from the world, but a mirror that helps him return to himself. This is not about offering comfort alone. It is about awakening a forgotten truth. When a mature woman reflects a man's emotional world back to him with respect and reverence, she restores something he didn't even realize was missing. In her presence, he feels human again, not a machine, not a provider, not a project, but a man with depth and meaning. This is the divine task of the conscious feminine, not to overpower the masculine, but to illuminate its forgotten dimensions. A woman who recognizes emotional strength in a man helps him integrate the parts of himself that were exiled by culture, by trauma, by time. She gives him permission to be both fierce and soft, both disciplined and tender. And this balance is what he has been unconsciously seeking all along. Such a woman becomes unforgettable, not because she gave him what he wanted, but because she saw what he didn't know he needed. Her compliments are not surface-level affirmations. They are keys that unlock doors he's long kept shut. And she doesn't use those keys to enter or control. She uses them to remind, To say with her words, "This is who you are. I see it, and I value it." This kind of energy is deeply feminine, not in the way of passivity, but in the way of wisdom. The mature woman knows that to truly connect with a man is not to demand that he be less of himself, but to recognize when he is becoming more. She sees the effort behind the silence, the courage behind restraint, the love hidden in his guarded heart. And when she speaks to those things, not to flatter, but to affirm, she touches something ancient in him. A place that still remembers what it feels like to be whole. A place that, even after all these years, still longs to be seen. Asterisk, there is a part of every man that he tries to keep hidden, not just from others, but from himself. This part is filled with the things he was told not to be, the feelings he was taught to suppress, the desires and fears that didn't fit the image of what the world said a man should be. This hidden realm is what psychology calls the shadow. And though he may bury it beneath logic, success, or charm, it remains ever present, influencing his behavior, his relationships, and even his sense of worth. The tragedy is not that the shadow exists, but that so few people are willing to help a man face it with compassion. Yet a mature woman, one who knows the terrain of her own darkness, holds a rare gift. She can help a man bring his shadow into the light, not by correcting him, but by affirming the truth that he is still lovable, even in his imperfection. When most people encounter the shadow in another, they flinch. They criticize, they distance, or they try to control it. But that response only deepens the man's shame. It reinforces his belief that he must hide the parts of himself that are messy, uncertain, or emotional, so he builds walls. He compartmentalizes. He becomes a fragmented self-presentable on the outside, but disconnected within. The more he suppresses, the more unstable he becomes. And the more he pretends to be complete, the lonelier he feels inside. But then, someone sees him. Not just the version he performs, but the parts he tries to keep locked away. She sees the anger behind the calm, the grief behind the strength, the fear behind the arrogance. And instead of turning away, she leans in. Not to fix him or to rescue him, but to say something he's rarely heard. Even here, in your imperfection, you are still worthy. This kind of compliment is not flattery. It is not manipulation. It is an act of deep psychological love. When a woman looks at a man and acknowledges his struggle without judging it, when she sees his effort, even in his failure, she helps him reintegrate what he thought had to be hidden forever. She becomes a mirror, not just for his strengths, but for his wholeness. There is immense healing in this. When a man is complimented not for being perfect, but for being real, something shifts inside him. He no longer feels the need to keep performing. He no longer has to defend against his own feelings. He can breathe. He can relax into the truth that he is more than his mistakes, more than his fear, more than the identity he built to survive. And the woman who offers this space, who says with sincerity, "I admire your ability to stay open, even when things get messy," or "I respect the way you own your faults instead of hiding from them," she becomes a catalyst for growth. Not by taking control of his evolution, but by witnessing it without fear. She does not shame him into change. She creates the environment in which transformation becomes possible. This is the feminine at its most powerful, not domineering, not submissive, but deeply present and psychologically aware. Such a woman understands that the shadow is not a flaw to be eliminated, but a truth to be integrated. And by affirming the whole man, not just the polished version, she invites him into his own fullness. In this space, the man begins to shift. He becomes more responsible, not because he is being corrected, but because he feels safe enough to stop pretending. He becomes more open, more reflective, more emotionally intelligent, not for her, but because she has helped him see that he is not broken, just incomplete. And now, he has a chance to become whole. Compliments that acknowledge the shadow are rare. They require a level of presence, empathy, and maturity that few possess. But when offered genuinely, they have the power to undo years of internal division. They teach a man that he does not need to be perfect to be loved, that he does not need to exile parts of himself to earn connection. And once he believes that, everything begins to change. He stands taller, not out of pride, but from the relief of being seen. He stops hiding, not because he has nothing to hide, but because someone finally showed him that even the hidden parts have value. And the woman who gave him that reflection, who complimented not just his achievements, but his ability to face himself, she becomes more than a partner. She becomes a healer of the soul. There is a quiet, almost mystical strength that lives within the authentic feminine. It is not the kind of strength that needs to overpower, dominate, or impress. It is not loud. It does not demand recognition. Instead, it radiates a gentle but undeniable presence that affects those who encounter it in profound ways. A mature woman who has come to embody this energy does not compliment to manipulate. She does not flatter to gain control or coax affection. She gives from a deeper place, a place of truth and clarity. Her words are not born out of need or strategy. They arise from a calm self-knowing and a genuine desire to witness another human soul. In doing so, she becomes a mirror to a man's essence. And that kind of woman is not only rare, she's irresistible. We live in a world where words are cheapened, where compliments are used to mask insecurity, gain validation, or curry favor. In this noisy landscape, most men have learned to dismiss praise. They've heard it used as currency, given with expectation, coded in need. But when a woman who is deeply rooted in her own worth offers a compliment, it lands differently. It doesn't cling. It doesn't seek. It simply gives. And it gives from the soul. This is not the compliment that says, "You look good today," although there is nothing wrong with such things. This is the compliment that looks beyond what is, seen and speaks to what is felt. It sounds like, "There's something in the way you carry yourself that makes people feel protected, even when you say nothing at all." Or, "The way you held space for that difficult moment, it showed a strength that doesn't need to shout." These words are not decorations. They are revelations. They reveal to a man something he may have suspected but never fully owned, that his quiet presence matters, that his way of being has weight, that he does not need to perform to be valued. What makes these compliments so powerful is their origin. They are born from a place that is untouched by fear or neediness. The woman who gives them is not looking to be chosen or affirmed. She has already done that work within herself. Her femininity is no longer entangled with the need to prove, to please, or to control. It is free, and because it is free, it can see. She sees the man not as an object of fantasy or as a savior, but as a soul in his own right, complex, layered, unfinished. And she speaks to that soul with the reverence of someone who knows what it means to be unseen and has chosen to be different. There is something deeply ancestral in this. In the symbolic union of the masculine and feminine, the feminine is often the reflector, the one who names the unseen. The masculine, forged through action, discipline, and endurance, often becomes disconnected from its own emotional pulse. But when the conscious feminine enters not as a force of correction, but as a presence of clarity, she reminds the masculine of its heart. She reawakens what has been forgotten. That being is as sacred as doing, that feeling is not a weakness, but a compass, and that authenticity matters more than imaged out in this space. A compliment is no longer a tactic. It becomes a transmission. It is felt as truth. And because it is rooted in emotional honesty, it carries weight. A man may forget the praise of many, but he will not forget the woman who told him, "You have a kind of dignity when you walk." into a room that changes the atmosphere. It's not what you say, it's who you are. That kind of compliment does not inflate the ego. It nourishes the soul. It reminds him of who he is beneath all the armor, and something beautiful begins to happen in the presence of such a woman. The man begins to open, not out of obligation, not because he's been pursued, but because he feels safe. Safe to let down his guard. Safe to show the parts of himself that were never validated. And as he softens, he grows. He becomes more of who he was always meant to be, not just the achiever, the protector, the provider, but the artist, the feeler, the dreamer, the healer. The feminine energy that empowers this kind of speech is not weak. It is not passive. It is profoundly strong. It is the strength that comes from deep inner integration. A woman who has walked through her own fire, who has sat with her own sorrow, who no longer sees her value as dependent on male approval. This woman speaks with an authority that no loudness can replicate. She knows the difference between attention and impact. She does not seek to seduce with her compliments. She seeks to uplift, to witness, to awaken. This kind of woman becomes a tuning fork in a man's life. Her words help him hear himself again. Not the noise of what he's been told to be, but the deep inner music of who he is. And when she speaks honestly, softly, intentionally, her words don't just touch his ears. They echo in his memory. They become the words he turns over in his mind when he doubts himself, the words he recalls in the silence of his becoming. This is the rare art of the conscious compliment. It is not a tool for manipulation. It is a gift of presence. It says, I see you. I honor you. Not because I need something from you, but because seeing you is my truth. And in a world starving for real connection, that kind of truth becomes irresistible. She becomes the kind of woman a man doesn't just desire, but respects, remembers, and holds sacred. Because in a world that so often demands he be more, she was the one who reminded him that he was already enough. Not by fixing him, flattering him, or chasing him, but by standing still, looking into his soul, and simply telling him what she saw. Asterisk. If you've ever wondered why certain women leave a mark on every man they meet, it's not magic, it's mastery. And it's something you can embody. Start giving compliments that touch a man's truth, not his image. Speak to his essence, not his armor, and watch what happens. He will remember you. He will respect you. And yes, he will feel drawn to you. Not because you wanted him to, but because your words made him more of who he truly is. Asterisk. If this message stirred something in you, let me know in the comments. What kind of compliment has changed your life? Have you ever given a man a compliment that transformed your relationship? Share your thoughts below and inspire another woman on her journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more motivational wisdom rooted in deep psychology.